What's happening here is that Europe is rearming. They're spending a lot more money on defense. Inevitably, the US is a major vendor of military gear. Inevitably, a lot of that will be purchases from the US just organically. They make some good stuff. So I think the European Commission felt fairly confident that if you look back 2 or 3 years from now, Europe will have collectively bought a lot of defense gear. Some of it will be from the US, some of it will be from the UK, but a lot of it will be from the US. And they'll be able to say, look, as promised, there have been a lot of purchases of US military equipment.
Donald Trump has been talking about his chats with Benjamin Netanyahu. He revealed that he's been averaging about a war a month. He talked about new food centres that the Americans, and that's really the only detail that he gave on that, will be part of in Gaza. One of the questions was challenging him as to whether or not he is referring to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation there or new centres. He said they will be centres where people can just walk in. He then moved on to talking about nuclear power in Scotland, having nice wives, and a little bit on winking at hostages. So we're going to work our way through this with political correspondent Katrina Stewart, who's been covering Trump's visit for The Times. Katrina, I mean, sometimes you just have to pin back your ears in wonder / bemusement at the direction of Donald Trump's conversations. And this went a little bit rambling. What's the most important thing, do you think, that we've learnt here?
It's very difficult to follow, isn't it? We had a question here about taxes, and he managed to go from the question of taxes to the phrase transgender for everybody. So pinning that down is very difficult. I mean, the key issues that Keir Starmer will want to be discussing with Donald Trump today are the issues on which the US and the UK are furthest apart. So Ukraine, Gaza, top of the agenda is going to be tariffs in the steel industry. I'm not really sure that we learned anything particularly useful there. Hopefully, Keir Starmer will be able to pin Donald Trump down to some more specifics and come away with something useful from this afternoon's discussion. Because if you look at, for example, the discussion on steel, that's been ongoing for some months now. There's been just about 2 trade agreements signed, and neither of those have been taken forward. So all eyes on this afternoon.
Sure. And it is interesting, isn't it, that he did mention something different happening in Gaza in response to the many criticisms of the way that Israel has been allowing or not allowing food aid in, and the attacks on innocent people trying to get food within Gaza. What do you think we can learn from what he told us there? Is the suggestion that the American military will be involved in providing some kind of safe space for aid to be delivered? Is that what you got from it?
There is definitely a sense that Donald Trump is becoming increasingly frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu. He said a few things over the past few days that have really spoken to his wish that Bibi Netanyahu was falling into line a little bit more with what Donald Trump is looking for. He's speaking there about having aid centres rather than the focus on airdrops, which is what has been the main point of discussion over the past few days. And the airdrops do risk becoming performative if you are not having discussions about the systems of delivery of food, of opening up crossings and roads, of opening up diplomatic routes. Then you are risking this performative sense of just trying to work around the issue rather than tackling the issue directly. And there does seem like there is a potential there for some kind of additional military operation from the US.
He is absolutely right to keep mentioning the current status of the hostages, still very much in captivity. They have been there for such a long time. They probably are being moved to increasingly unsafe places in Gaza. But there was something about the nature of the stories that he wanted to tell about hostages that he'd met, asking them whether or not their captors had ever winked at them. It's a little bit distasteful, that, isn't it?
I think what he's trying to speak to there is the way that the captives are being held, whether they are having any sense of humanity from their captors. It's just the way that Donald Trump expresses these things. He's not particularly diplomatic, I think we can safely say. It Well, I do agree it was distasteful, but I think this is just the way that Donald Trump expresses himself, and it's difficult to interpret too much into it.
It is, isn't it? Also, quite a few references, to the kind of things that we've seen in movies and on television as a way to inform us of the current situation, which I think is a little telling in itself. He did also compliment Sir Keir Starmer on having a great trade deal and a nice wife. We will go on to talk about the trade deal in a moment, but I thought also it was interesting, given where this press conference is taking place. He is in Scotland. Obviously, some of the Scottish journalists really wanted to press him on how their economy will benefit from the involvement of Donald Trump. So anything to take away from that?
We did hear, it was Colin Mackay, one of my Scottish lobby colleagues, who was trying to press Donald Trump on what trade deals will mean for Scotland. And that is something that John Swinney will certainly also be pressing Donald Trump on when they meet today or tomorrow. The US is a massive trade partner for Scotland, and one of the issues that they want to talk about is the issue of whisky tariffs. John Swinney, our First Minister, wants to push Donald Trump on saying that Scotland should be exempt from the UK-wide tariffs because they are hitting the industry by £100 million, £4 million a week. And this is going to be a huge issue when the pair of them meet. But we didn't have anything concrete there from Donald Trump about Scotland and Scottish issues. He didn't really seem to understand the question and started pivoting to what he always pivots to, which is his love of Scotland and the fact that he has family ties to the country, which is very nice, but it doesn't really help our economy.
No, I mean, the pivoting was remarkable as well, wasn't it? Because it was a very specific question at the end there about the lionesses, and it went completely random and then contained some pretty encyclopedic knowledge of, I think, Joe Biden's administration. Anyway, Katrina, thank you very much indeed for that. That is our political correspondent covering Trump's visit for The Times. Let's talk a bit more about trade then with Dmitry Grouzobinski, who is a trade expert and former Australian negotiator. If we cast our mind back, Dmitry, just 24 hours ago, less than that, I think, where Donald Trump talked in his meeting with Ursula von der Leyen about having created the biggest trade deal ever struck by anybody. Is that actually true?
I don't think it is. It's certainly a very important deal. It's very important that these two large blocs strike an accord. But I mean, in the scale of human history, the agreements that created the World Trade Organization, the GATT, are larger. Most free trade agreements cover a lot more things. And huge parts of what was agreed today are still firmly in the to be determined box. But he is right that today was important.
Do you know what the stumbling blocks would have been? And we know that Donald Trump likes to be a showman in his negotiations, but there was a suggestion, I think, from his camp that the trade deal was a bit 50-50 before he came to the UK and came to Scotland. But then magically, within the space of an hour's negotiation, something momentous had been achieved. Is it likely that happened? And if there was an impediment, what was it that could be solved so relatively quickly?
Something we've seen over and over again is that the US negotiating team fundamentally doesn't know what Donald Trump will accept as a deal. So they do their best to guess, they negotiate with another partner, and then the leaders get on a phone call and it's really 6-1 in pick'em if Donald Trump will ultimately say, yes, this is good enough, or send them back into the room or throw the whole thing out. So it is entirely possible that they were 50-50 on a deal and that they quite legitimately had no idea if Donald Trump would be satisfied with what was on the table, satisfied with a little bit more, or not satisfied under any circumstances. It is very easy to believe that in that last hour he changed his mind or a particular sweetener got added that pushed him over the line.
Ursula von der Leyen, I thought, emphasised predictability as the kind of the loudest and strongest word when she was accepting the deal in public. And she's right about the need for predictability. But given everything that you've just said there about the art of the deal from Donald Trump's point of view, Are we right to think that he will be unpredictable about this going forward? Is this a really solid achievement?
I think this deal is as much predictability as you can reasonably expect in a Trumpian world. There is always the chance that he reneges. There are opportunities coming up as things like pharmaceutical tariffs start being discussed around steel and auto parts. In all sorts of areas, European digital taxation, where there is room for him to take umbrage and really unpick what was done today. Today is as much certainty as the EU could hope to get, and certainty is, at the end of the day, why most trade agreements from the smallest to the largest exist.
Donald Trump says that the EU has agreed to buy a vast amount of American military equipment as part of this deal. Is that bad news for the UK? Our Chancellor has set her sights on our defence industry being one of the levers that we'll be able to pull to get the UK economy growing again. Does this change that?
I'm really dubious about this claim. The European Commission has no authority to buy military equipment. That's not their role. That's not how that works. Similarly, with the investment commitments, the European Commission doesn't make investments. I think what's happening here is that Europe is rearming. They're spending a lot more money on defense. Inevitably, the US is a major vendor of military gear. Inevitably, a lot of that will be purchases from the US, just organically. They make some good stuff. So I think the European Commission felt fairly confident that if you look back 2 or 3 years from now, Europe will have collectively bought a lot of defense gear. Some of it will be from the US, some of it will be from the UK, but a lot of it will be from the US. And they'll be able to say, look, as promised, there have been a lot of purchases of US military equipment. I do not think that what the Commission agreed today will steer major contracts away from Britain and towards the US, unless that was happening for other reasons anyway.
Thank you very much indeed for your expertise. Thank you for your patience this afternoon as well. That is Dmitry Grouzobinski, a trade expert and former Australian negotiator.